The front door opened, as always, without a sound. Bruce Lee had that habit, entering any room without announcing himself. Weightless, as if his feet didn't touch the ground. It was early afternoon in Culver City, September 1972, and the Los Angeles sun was still heating the asphalt like glowing coals. He had spent the morning at the studio, followed by 2 hours of training in his own space, and was returning home with his mind in the place it always settled after a workout. Nowhere. Just present. But something was wrong. He noticed it before he saw it. A silence that was not a silence of peace. It was the kind of silence that exists when someone is crying quietly, held back by shame. Linda was hunched on the floor, on her knees in front of the sofa. Brandon was sitting there, 7 years old, his shoulders hunched inward, his face red, his hands clenched on his knees. He wasn't crying with noise anymore. He was crying in that way that hurts more, wet eyes, mouth tightly shut, trying to swallow it. Bruce paused at the entrance to the living room. Linda looked up but said nothing. He reached them, sat on the arm of the sofa next to his son, and placed a hand lightly on the boy's shoulder. "What happened?" Linda answered before Brandon could. He arrived like this. "I went to get him at Andrew's house. He was like this." Bruce looked at his son. Brandon looked at the floor. "What happened, Brandon?" The boy wiped his eyes with his fist, raised his head for a second, then lowered it again. "Nothing, Dad, I just don't want to be Andrew's friend anymore, that's all." Then he stood up slightly, very gingerly on his left leg and went to his room. Bruce kept looking down the hallway. He saw the slight imbalance in his stride, saw the careful way the boy bent his left knee to sit on the bed before closing the door. He told Linda to leave their son be for now, that when the time was right, he would talk to him. Dinner was ready 40 minutes later. Linda called out. Brandon didn't respond. Bruce went to the room. The boy was lying down with an open book he was clearly not reading. He stood up when his father entered, tried to walk normally, and steadied his pace. Bruce pulled the desk chair over and sat down calmly, in no rush. He crossed his arms. "Now it's just the two of us. Tell me what happened to that leg." Brandon opened his eyes. His expression was that of someone who thought they had hidden something very well, yet had hidden nothing at all. He lowered his head. "I didn't want to fight back, Dad. You always taught me that we don't use what we learn to hurt anyone." Bruce was quiet for a moment. There was pride there, real pride, the kind that tightens the chest in a good way. "Tell me exactly what happened, son." Brandon told him everything. Andrew's father, Dominic, was a man built out of proportion. 6'4", 192 ml, over 220 lbs, 100 kg. The kind of physique that only exists when someone decides that the gym isn't a lifestyle, but an obsession. Bruce had crossed paths with him a few times at school while picking up Brandon, that huge man, muscles bulging almost artificially, looking at Bruce Lee with an expression not of anger, but of condescension. The look of someone who sees an insect and hasn't decided whether to crush it out of laziness, not respect. Dominic had called the two children into the backyard. He said men didn't fight over a video game controller, that they would have to resolve it like two men. Whoever knocked the other one down kept the controller. Brandon said he wouldn't do it. He said Andrew could keep the game, that he preferred to call his mother to come get him. When he tried to walk through the door, Dominic pushed him back. Brandon fell onto the backyard concrete and looked up at that huge man blocking the exit, arms crossed, a smirk on the corner of his mouth. "Aren't you the son of the great Bruce Lee? That little skinny Chinese guy who swears he has American roots?" He laughed. "Show me what you know, Minnie Lee. Let's see if you're as good as your father." Brandon got up. He said his father always taught him that violence was never the way. But before he could finish the sentence, Andrew attacked him from behind, pushing him by the shoulders. Brandon fell to his knees. The impact on the backyard concrete was sharp. His left knee hit directly and the skin tore. Brandon started to cry. Dominic looked at the crying boy and calmly said the worst thing an adult can say to a child, as I expected, "Weak, just like your father." Then he turned, walked into the house and asked his wife to call the boy's mother. Brandon stayed there on the backyard floor alone, his knee bleeding, waiting for his mother to arrive. As his son recounted the story, Bruce examined his knee in silence. The wound was superficial, but real, a clean cut, already clotting. When Brandon finished, Bruce was quiet for a long moment, then said, "You did the right thing, son. Nothing more." He went to get the first aid kit, cleaned the knee with antiseptic, and applied a bandage with care and patience. He told Brandon to have dinner with his mother, that he would be back later, that he had matters to resolve. Brandon looked at him with the eyes of a child who understands more than he should. Bruce grabbed his coat and left. Culver City had a few neighborhood bars that Bruce knew by sight. Not because he frequented them, he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he slept at 10 p.m. whenever possible and woke up before the sun, but because he knew the territory where he lived. He had seen Dominic at that bar on Jefferson Street more than once, always with the same group, big men, tight shirts, tall glasses of beer. Laughter that took over the room as if the space belonged to them. Bruce entered. The bar smelled of stale beer and fried food. A jukebox was playing something that no one there was really listening to. Dominic was where Bruce expected, sitting at the back counter, two equally bulky friends to his right. A glass in hand, the posture of someone who has nothing to fear in the world. Bruce walked up to him. He stopped 2 steps away, 140 lbs, 63 kg, a simple dark shirt, black pants, the expression of someone who had finished making a decision before leaving the house. Dominic saw him in the mirror behind the counter before turning around, and he smiled. It was exactly the smile of someone who had been waiting. Someone who had provoked a father knew the father would come. "Busy day," said Bruce. "How many 7-year-olds did you terrorize today besides my son?" Dominic spun slowly on his stool, set his glass on the counter, and stood up. The difference was almost comical to anyone who knew nothing about what they were looking at. Dominic had 70+ lbs, 30+ kg on him, and a full head in height. The 2 friends beside him watched with the expression of those who already knew how this would end. "I'm raising my son to be a man," Dominic said. "If you aren't doing the same with yours, that's not my problem." Bruce looked at him for a second, then said, in his usual calm tone, "Working out every day, terrorizing 7-year-olds, and still your brain couldn't grow beyond a pea. Great example you're setting for your son. Stay away from mine, or you will regret it in a way no gym can fix." He turned his back, and it was at that moment that Dominic decided it was the right time. The 220 lb man raised his arm, his huge hand open, and landed it with force on Bruce Lee's right shoulder. What happened next lasted less than 2 seconds, but I will explain exactly what happened because this is where most people don't understand. When Dominic placed his hand on Bruce's shoulder, he made a fundamental technical error and paid for it in real time. Bruce pivoted to the left in a fraction of a second, a hip rotation that wasn't defense, it was anticipation. Dominic's hand, which had landed to grab, found the emptiness of the shoulder that had moved. And in that microsecond of imbalance, Bruce captured the man's wrist with both hands. What Bruce applied has a technical name in Jeet Kune Do, and in close contact fighting traditions, wrist control with joint rotation, derived from Wing Chun principles and refined by Bruce over years of study. The mechanics are simple but brutal in their efficiency. The human wrist, when rotated beyond a certain angle, specifically when the radius and ulna are forced into rotation opposite to their natural range, sends a signal of pain so immediate and total to the nervous system that the entire body collapses before the brain processes what happened. It doesn't require brute force, it is geometry applied to the human body. Bruce applied precisely that angle with both hands, with the weight of his hips behind the movement, not his arms. Dominic, 220 lbs of muscle built through years of gyms and underground fights, started to go down. He didn't fall, he descended as if his own body weight were obeying those small hands. His knee hit the floor first, then the second knee, and he screamed. It wasn't a small sound, it was the kind of involuntary scream, the one that escapes before shame has a chance to block it, the scream of someone in real pain who has no choice. The bar went silent. Bruce held it. He didn't let go. He kept the wrist angle, his eyes fixed on Dominic below him. "You are not a man, Dominic. Why are you crying like that?" Dominic tried not to make a sound. He failed. Bruce let go. The man collapsed sideways onto the floor, his free hand immediately going to his wrist. He stayed there looking up. Bruce stood above him, speaking slowly. "I am not in favor of these words and even less of violence, but if you touch my son again, what you felt just now will not be 1% of what is coming. And think about how you are raising Andrew. He is a child. He should be playing, not watching a man break another's legs in the ring." He turned his back and walked out the same door he had entered. The bar remained quiet for a while after Bruce left. Dominic's two friends looked at him on the floor. No one said anything. No one bent down to help, perhaps because they didn't know how, perhaps because the scene they had just witnessed didn't fit into any model of the world they knew. Dominic stood up by himself, walked out, and didn't go straight home. He sat in the car for a while. His wrist throbbed. Other parts of his body also ached. The knee on the concrete, his dignity. Something deeper that he wouldn't have words to name at that moment. He didn't understand how Bruce had touched only his wrist. Only his wrist. He arrived home when his wife and Andrew were already asleep. He didn't go to bed, he went to the backyard. The same backyard where he had pushed a 7-year-old boy a few hours earlier and sat in the lawn chair with a beer can he didn't open. And there, in that early morning silence of Culver City, Dominic did something he hadn't done in years. He sat quietly with himself. Memories don't ask for permission when they finally enter. They arrive in whatever order they want. He was 10 years old when his father took him to his first underground fight, not as a spectator. Dominic had fought with his older brother over some small thing, he didn't remember what, and his father had seen it and said it was time to settle it for real. He put them both in the car, drove 40 minutes to a warehouse on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, and told Dominic he had to win. Dominic had won. His brother left with a broken arm. His father had given him a slap on the back that night, as if it were a compliment. He grew up thinking that was what it meant to be strong, thinking that the father who humiliates, who demands, who doesn't hug, was preparing his son for the world. He grew up repeating that logic in everything he did, in the gym, in fights, in the way he treated Andrew. And he sat in the backyard remembering the times he had cried in secret, with his face in his pillow at night so he wouldn't make a sound, the shower's hot water covering the noise. Those times that didn't fit into any idea of a man he had been taught, but existed all the same. He stayed there until the sky began to brighten. The next morning, he woke Andrew up before school. He sat with his son in the kitchen. The boy looked at him with that expression of a child who doesn't know what to expect. Dominic knew things were going to change. He said there were things he had done that weren't right in how he treated Andrew, in how he saw the world, that he didn't want his son to grow up the way he had grown up. It was a short conversation. Dominic wasn't a man of many words. When he finished, Andrew looked at his father for a long second and, for the first time in his life, asked, "Can I give you a hug, Dad?" Dominic didn't answer, he just opened his arms. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon in Culver City, Bruce Lee was at home when the doorbell rang. It was Dominic, with Andrew beside him. Andrew asked to speak to Brandon first. Brandon came to the door with his knee still bandaged, wary. The big boy in front of him was the son of the man who had knocked him down. Andrew said, "I want to apologize. What my father did was wrong, and what I did was too. You had the courage not to fight back, even though you could have. I don't want to lose your friendship." Brandon looked at him for a moment, then he smiled the way children smile when they decide that things are okay, whole, without reservation. The two went off to play. Bruce and Dominic stayed outside. They sat on the porch. Bruce brought out 2 glasses of water. Dominic looked at the glass as if he had never seen anyone offer water before. They talked for an entire afternoon. Dominic apologized. Not in a performative way, but in the way of someone who is uncomfortable with the words because he isn't used to using them that way. He said that night, on the bar floor with everyone watching, he had felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't the pain in his wrist, it was something else, the feeling that everything he thought he knew about strength, about what it meant to be a man, about how to raise a son, had collapsed in less than 2 seconds at the hands of someone who weighed 70 lbs less than him. "How did you do that?" he asked. "I don't understand. You barely touched me." Bruce was silent for a moment. "You spent your whole life building resistance on the outside," he said finally. "No one ever taught you that most battles are won before they begin, not by the biggest, but by the one who understands where the other's structure is already about to give way." Dominic was quiet. "When you put your hand on my shoulder," continued Bruce, "you weren't attacking me. You were warning me that you were afraid. Men who aren't afraid don't need to intimidate. I didn't use force. I used the direction your own body created when it lost its balance for a second. You gave me everything I needed without realizing it." Dominic sat there, listening to the man he had brought to his knees on a bar floor with two fingers talk about fear, about strength, about what it means to raise a child. That talk lasted the whole afternoon. It lasted longer. It lasted months, years. Dominic never became a martial artist, but he changed the gym. He changed the bar. He changed his backyard. He started taking Andrew to the park, to baseball games, to the boring and simple things that 7-year-olds love and that he had never thought were worth the time. In 1978, 6 years after that afternoon, Dominic was interviewed by a small Los Angeles community newspaper about a youth sports program he had helped create in the neighborhood. The journalist asked what had motivated the change. Dominic was quiet for a moment, then said, "A man showed me that I could knock down anyone I put in front of me and that it was worth nothing." This is the part of Bruce Lee's story that no one tells, not because it is less impressive than a kick or a punch, but because it requires something harder to recognize, that Bruce Lee's greatest demonstration of strength that afternoon in Culver City was not knocking Dominic down in the bar, it was knowing when to stop. It was walking away. It was going home. Sitting on the edge of his 7-year-old son's bed, cleaning a wounded knee with care, and saying, "You did the right thing."